The Corvair Greenbrier. This is Chevy's very first attempt at making a minivan, and I think it's incredibly innovative and creative. They were made for 5 years between 1961 and 1965. This is a 64 model. It's called a Sportswagen Deluxe, and there's a lot to share with you. This thing is so incredibly finicky when the engine is cold. In fact, it's stalled 3 times just coming out of the garage, and it has always done that. It's always been cold-blooded. I'm figuring it's probably time to rebuild the carburetors, sync them up, and replace the choke, and that's going to be a future project at this point. It's considered a Corvair 95, and they made 2 models of the Corvair 95. The 95 is a reference to the wheelbase. They made a pickup truck version called a ramp side, where the side of the bed folded down and made a ramp. You can easy access in and out. And the van, they made 2 types of vans. They made a cargo van and, of course, the passenger van that you see here. So like all Corvairs, this is rear-wheel drive, rear engine also. So you can see the fuel tank is right there. It's on the outside of the vehicle, but underneath the seat. There's your air intake. That is an aftermarket air extractor that's been added on at some point in the vehicle's life. In the back of the van, obviously you have your 2 barn doors, and underneath the barn doors is a quick access to the oil filter, air filter, coil, and some basic parts. Full access to the vehicle is from inside, underneath the carpet. I'm always surprised by how difficult it is and cumbersome it is to get this hatch up. You can see these screws that go around the perimeter of the platform, but once you get the platform up, you actually have pretty good access to the engine. You can see the 2 single barrel carburetors right here. You have an oil bath pre-filter here. You have paper elements on each carburetor as well. You can see this tortuous route that this belt is supposed to take, going all the way down to the crank pulley. It's recommended to change that belt once every year, and I did that for the first 3 years. However, I stopped after that, and I'm simply playing with fire. I want to see how long I can go before that belt breaks. In the event it does, I have plenty of spares, and literally it takes 5, maybe 10 minutes max to be able to swap that belt off and get a new one on. The innovation that I mentioned earlier isn't just about the engine being air-cooled and being a flat 6. A really good example of what I'm talking about is simply in the doors. They're barn door style, obviously. You see they're open 180 degrees, but there's a 2-position door latch right here that you can pop out to change the position of the door. Normally when you open the door, it will stop naturally in, say, a 95-degree position. If you close it just slightly, you can pull out the door latch, and it will allow the door to swing a full 180 degrees. And those same 2-stage door latches are on the side doors as well. On the side doors, you have these bumpers right here and right down here, and simply for when you open the door 180 degrees, it protects the body from being damaged. So with the doors open, you can see the do-si-do seating, which is pretty cool. You can see the mounts here on the floor where this second row can be flipped around to be forward facing. This van is a deluxe model, and that gives you the upholstered door panels, the carpeting, and some trim work around the windshield. You can see window cranks on the 2 side windows, and the same thing on the windows and the doors as well. You know, it's a relatively small van with a 95-inch wheelbase, but the seating position is about what you would expect in a modern-day SUV. In fact, I'm 5'8", and hopping into this thing, I have to like spring up a little bit on one foot to get in. You know, I also do that little hop up in order to protect the paint on the wheel well. I don't want to scratch that up. But once you're in here, you can see there's not a lot of room between your head and the roof. Now, for my height, I'm fine, though I do get jostled and bounced around. Though taller drivers, they're going to have a hard time being comfortable in here. Inside, you have basic 1960s. In fact, this is even less than what you might expect from something from the 60s. You have a great horn. You have lights. Windshield wipers, 2-stage by the way, and washers, that's surprising. Odometer showing almost 70,000, a lighter. And what's interesting about the ignition, if you know anything about Chevrolets, that once you have the engine on, you can pull the key out. With the engine running, you could turn it off and you can start it as well. Only when it's in the lock position do you keep somebody from being able to drive away with your car. The gauges are basic. There's a speedometer that goes up to 80 and a fuel gauge. And down here you have 4 idiot lights, one for temp, oil pressure, generator, and the fan. Down below you have your fancy HVAC controls, one for your fan speed, one for heat, bringing in outside air, and another to divert the hot air to the defroster. Ashtray, glove compartment with 2 cup holders. Down below, you have a foot vent, and this foot vent operates the vent in the grill. There's also 2 side air vents as well, one for driver and passenger. And next to the foot vent is the parking brake. With the headlights on, you can see that the running lights are on with the headlights, which is not standard for 1964. That didn't happen until years later. And in the back of the van, you can see the inboard lights aren't lights at all. They're simply reflectors, while all the lighting, turn signals, and brake light functions are on the outside. All right, so why don't we go for a quick drive before it gets too dark? You know, despite the engine being so finicky when it's cold, it starts instantly when the engine's warmed up. And it starts like that every single time. These vans came standard with a 3-speed manual transmission. A power glide was optional, which is a 2-speed automatic. And then you could also option what this van has, which is a 4-speed manual. For having only 110 horsepower, it's not terrible. It really isn't. It does very nicely around town. And that's where I do all my driving with this thing. 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, stop sign, boulevard stuff. You can drive it on the highway, however, it's not advised. Top speed is a little under 80 or so. However, wind speed matters. It really makes a difference whether you're going with the wind or against the wind. Everyone who sees the van, they smile and laugh. They really enjoy seeing it. And I think that's what makes this thing so unusual, and it's so forgotten in the world of Chevrolets anyway. They made 107 or so thousand of these vans, but you hardly see them anywhere. You go to a show, for instance, you don't see them. You don't see them on the highways anymore. It's not like a Chevelle or a Camaro. These things are built surprisingly robust. It's like a unibody, right? But there's a subframe front and rear. There's thick steel metal gussets supporting the structure underneath as well. This thing is rated to haul 3/4 tons. That's a lot of weight for such a little vehicle. You would think that being able to haul that much weight, it would have a rough ride, and it really isn't. It's really quite smooth and refined for being so small and narrow. So with the engine in the rear, this thing will porpoise though when you go over bumps. It'll do-do, ba-boom, ba-boom, enough that you'll crack your head on the roof. And that's what I was referring to with just this much headroom. Now it fits me fine, and I've cracked my head once or twice, but anybody taller, they're walking away with brain damage. I think something I enjoy so much about this van is that it's all mechanical, right? There's no electronics on it. There's not even power accessories. For instance, it's manual steering and manual drum brakes, carburetor. Every year or so, the timing starts drifting a little bit, and I have to get out there and adjust the points somewhat and reset the timing. Part of the routine maintenance that goes into keeping these things on the road. Tune-up parts doesn't consist of very much. 6 spark plugs, an oil change, a fan belt, point, condenser, rotor, distributor cap. That's it. Basic. And that's all you need. Really, it's like 3 tools. All you have to do is keep those tools with you, and you can do 95% of any repairs you need to make on this thing. And with all that simplicity, I can see this thing lasting 50 more years, a whole nother lifespan, as long as it doesn't get eaten up by rust and as long as mechanical parts remain available. So this van is one of my favorite old cars of all time. It's something I've truly adored over the years. It's also a forgotten van. I mentioned that earlier. And it's forgotten not just with Chevrolet fans or old car fans, but also with YouTube viewers as well. I started my YouTube channel using this van as my first piece of content when I started making videos. And the viewers never responded. The views are always super low, and it has always been that way with this car versus some of the other videos that I make. But I keep plugging away, keep trying to sell it, keep trying to raise awareness about how cool this thing is. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll catch you tomorrow.